Hey, I'm Soundfont Guy, and today I'm going to take a quick look at Super Audio Kart 2 from Impact Soundworks. As both a fan and creator of retro video game music, Super Audio Kart 2 is something I've been looking forward to for years now. So I'm going to briefly look at the parts of it that are most relevant to me and my interests. But full disclaimer, I received this product for free from Impact Soundworks directly. I am not being paid to make this video, and all of the opinions you'll hear are my own. Additionally, it's only fair that I disclose to all of you that, since I released Guy Engine almost a full year before Super Audio Kart 2 came out, they could be considered competitors. So I will be mindful not to let my personal bias get in the way of giving an honest review of a tool that may be valuable to those who want to compose music in retro game styles. There's room for all of us in this space, and I want to make that my priority here. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it. So here we have Super Audio Kart 2. It runs in Contact, and I believe it also runs in the free version of Contact, so that's nice. Like I said before, this isn't going to be a full review of all of the functionality of this library. I'm just going to focus on the things that are most interesting to me, which are things like Nintendo 64 samples, PSX samples, maybe some Game Boy and GBA too. Those are the things that are kind of the most near and dear to my heart, as you probably know if you've watched this channel at all. So I'm going to mostly be looking at that stuff. So without further ado, let's just jump into some of these samples and play around with them, and maybe we'll make a little music too. So as far as I understand it, the very passionate people behind this plugin, not only did they develop these samples themselves, but they also ran them through real hardware. I believe that that's true, and it's very noticeable in the way that these sound. I have messed with it a little bit. So let's just go ahead and play with some of these sounds, and then I'll stop yapping and just let you listen. There's quite a lot to choose from in here. You can also sort by category. Let's go with some strings here. Something that I like here is that they have the recreation tag. These are recreations of sounds from games. They're not ripped from the games. They're just, sort of attempts to recreate a similar texture. Pretty nice. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and try to make it track a little bit of a tune using some of these samples. And here's the final product. So now that you've heard my little beach town composition using only Super Audio Kart 2's PSX, N64, and GBA instruments, let me break down my personal pros and cons for this product, based mainly or almost entirely on those consoles. Pros? Huge selection of sounds spanning 21 different gaming consoles. Authentic sounding PS1 and N64 instruments. Old school Rompler style setup and functions like multi-timbrality and FX chains. Works with the free version of Contact. There is a nice balance of completely original sounds and sounds directly inspired by iconic game instruments. Just like Gyengine, nothing here is ripped from other sources, so no copyright worries. And now for the cons. Some of the instruments in the PSX and N64 categories sound a little weak, and there are some minor pitch issues here and there. The price is $199 for the full package, which is pretty steep, though I believe if you have Super Audio Kart 1, you can upgrade for like $100, which is pretty nice. I also noticed that a lot of the samples seem to be shared between the systems, and that's perfectly fine, except that the difference between how they sound is, in some cases, barely noticeable. However, if you're like me and you're fascinated by the tech of those eras, you will notice the subtle differences between them, which is actually pretty cool and belongs on the pros list. So here's my final verdict on Super Audio Kart 2, based on my own fiddling around specifically with the PS1 and N64 stuff. I think it's great. It feels very much like its own thing with its own texture. It's super reminiscent of the consoles that it takes inspiration from, and I know from personal experience that those consoles like PS1 and Nintendo 64 in particular are challenging to get sounding right due to their later era sample-based music playback. Anything up to the Super Nintendo is highly recognizable and very sort of specialized. But once you get into the 5th gen of gaming, the instrument samples start to sound much less compressed. That said, they do still have their own unique texture, which, for fans of those eras, is a huge selling point. Between the recreated sounds and the originals, I particularly like the originals. They've got that obvious 32-bit flavor to them, but they're distinct and unique. There's really no other sound quite like them. So you can really make music that is inspired by that era, but still very much your own. In hindsight, my fear of SAC2 being a rival to Gyengine was largely unfounded. I think these are pretty distinct tools who each have their own space and would probably work extraordinarily well together in compositions in these retro styles. All in all, if you have the $200 to spend or $100 to upgrade, you could do a lot worse than Super Audio Kart 2. You're getting well over 1,000 original samples from over 20 different game consoles. Yeah, it's got a thumbs up from me. Become a patron to get stuff like sound fonts, sample packs, and all of my content early and ad-free, just like these legends: Scruffington, Cryonic Sage 7719, Dwayne Stokes, Sammy Michele, Irian, It's Just Me Art, Christopher Chang, ZM Music, Jonathan Pulio Konopka, Ethan Isaiah Kirshner, Justin Hawes, Allo, Bliss, Edward Fleming, Selena, Bulma Simp, and Pineapple Man.